Last year, I was at the pub, as one does after full council, and one of my friends started speaking about his experience, his quite dire experience living in defense housing. Now, the conversation quickly turned into a debate on whether the government can, should, or would, three different questions, do anything about this. So I started writing this motion a good few months ago on the impact of the cost of living crisis on our armed forces community, as well as the housing standards. But as I was doing my research on this topic, I found more and more issues faced by our armed forces community. Reading stories from Commonwealth veterans struggling with obscene immigration fees to be able to live with their families, hearing the experiences of Afghans stuck abroad, and also listening to people who retired from the army who did not always know where to look for support when they needed it. I then worked on this motion with our Armed Forces Covenant officer, who has both the lived experience and the expertise and does coordinate support across the county. Chair, I don't think anyone in this room will disagree that to say that we are proud of our armed forces community and we all want to be able to provide both locally and nationally the political and practical support that is needed. But let us face the reality today. As with so many things in this country, it is getting worse. Our armed forces have been hollowed out and underfunded. And this is not my personal opinion only or the view of my friends at the pub. There are the words of the former Conservative Secretary of State for Defense last year. And since then, things did not get better despite the ministerial reshuffles. The Public Accounts Committee found the largest funding deficit ever in MOD equipment plans. The army has been cut to its smallest size since the time of Napoleon. Recruitment targets missed every year for the last 14 years, and morale falling to record lows. Of course, it is not a great record, but I will welcome one thing from the government, which is very unusual of me, the fact that they scrapped visa fees for Commonwealth veterans in 2022, although we should not have required the amount of pressure to simply do the right thing on this issue. Now, locally in the county, we are of course limited in what we can do about all this as a council. But one thing we can do is to ensure our armed forces covenant role works efficiently across our communities. When I sent this motion to be heard on the council, I put it on the long waiting list. There was a risk that the funding for this role would stop. Since then, thanks to the contributions of all district councils and Peterborough as well, the role is funded for another 3 years. But the point of this motion is not whether we have the funding for 1 year, 2 years, or 5 years. It's to say that this crucial coordination role should be funded centrally with long-term sustainable grants everywhere across the UK. Now, Chair, I know that some colleagues really don't like writing letters to government. And I have a lot of spare pens if the chief exec needs one. But seriously, this is because what actually needs to be changed to help us locally to do our work actually lies in the hands of central government. And I also strongly believe in our role as locally elected representatives to put pressure on whoever the government of the day is to ensure our communities in Cambridgeshire get the best deal they can get. First, on the cost of living crisis, the government can and should provide additional basic financial support to service personnel by capping food and accommodation charges for at least the next year, because we are still in the middle of a cost of living crisis. Second, I do think we should ask on behalf of the communities that we represent for government to step up plans to allow Afghan refugees who served to get safely to the UK. And finally, on Commonwealth veterans, again, this is something we don't have control over, but if government scrapped the fees for veterans, why not for their spouses and their children, so everyone can have a family life? And this, of course, does affect us locally because we speak to people who are in those situations in our divisions. The motion text and briefing have a lot more detail, and you have all the different local facts in the briefing. But the fundamental question of this motion today is, do we actually want to show support to our armed forces in one voice as a united council? And yes, this includes our armed forces who happen not to be born in the UK, but nevertheless serve this country and their families as well. Or do we want to be divided on this important issue for our communities across Cambridgeshire? And on that note, Chair, I am very much looking forward to the debate. Thank